Right, good evening, everyone. I assume you can hear me at the back? Just good. It's my job to support the last session of this evening before we probably have a little bit of time, I think, at the end to have a bit of one-on-one sessions. I was a alumni of Brunel. I still am an alumni of Brunel. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and about 15 years ago I was sitting where you were. We didn't have the good fortune of having speakers that were in the industry, because to be honest, there wasn't really much of an industry. It was a few people doing PE, there's a few people doing teaching, and there was a few people coaching and blowing whistles and wearing tracksuits, and that really was about it. Fortunately for me, and as Jim Lawler said earlier, fortunately for all of us, sport is a growing industry. It's a very exciting industry, and I think we're all very lucky to have made the choice to be part of it, because I have every belief that it will continue to grow, and there will continue to be some great opportunities. But with all good things, there's always a but, and but is something that I'm going to share with you tonight, bring home some reality of those buts, and maybe try and share with you some of the ways in which we can overcome that. I'm also conscious that I only have about 10 minutes, so I will try and rush through this. If you have any questions, shout them out. Don't worry about hands. Shout them out, and I'll try and answer them there and then, or we can do it at the end, or we can do it thereafter. First of all, just a little bit of interaction. Who here, just by a show of hands, knows exactly what they want to do when they leave university? They know exactly what career path they've got. They know everything about that career, and they know exactly how to go about it. I can see about 5, maybe 6 at that, and there's probably 40, 50 in the room, 60, 70? 80 plus. Okay, so 5 out of 80. So a lot of you don't know. I think that's the point here. And this picture, I like the bike, that's why I put it in. But the reason I put it in here was just really to make you realise, or to hopefully show you, that when you leave here, you have a world of opportunity. And it's fantastic on one side because you can choose exactly what you want to do, but on the other hand, it's very daunting because you don't know what you want to do. And as Jim said earlier from Manchester United, and it's very interesting to hear what he had to say, because a lot of it is repeated in here, but it's about understanding what you want to do and following those career paths to make you aware and able to follow that dream. Sports industry, roughly speaking, 550,000 companies across 204 countries around the world. That's your marketplace. Estimated worth of the sports industry is $600 billion. That was a report that came out a couple of years ago by A.T. Kearney, which is a management consultancy firm. I have every reason to believe that that's gone up. So, bigger than $600 billion. 10 million people, again, very rough, and it depends how you define sports, but roughly 10 million people employed in the sports industry. We've got 80 in the room. Let's see how many of those 80 we can get employed in the sports industry. So this is, I imagine this is one of you standing, facing the world and trying to decide what your next move is. I've used this picture quite a few times, well, a sort of picture very similar to this, and I'll just, again, 2 minutes and shout out, who can see, or what sort of jobs can you see going on behind the scenes of this picture? Obviously, you can see, there's a stadium, so there'll be a venue manager, there'll be a security manager, there's catering in that venue, so that there'll be hospitality, there'll be food, there'll be beverage, there'll be catering. Anyone else got any suggestions on what other opportunities there are? Lighting technicians, so Philips, Philips, massive lighting brand, global lighting brand. You can go and work for them in their sports and venues department or division. Anybody else can see anything else? If I tell you there's 167 jobs in this picture, would that surprise you? That's 167 that we could think of. There's construction. Someone's got to build the stadium. There's groundsmen. There's grass. There's artificial turf. There's all the venue element of it. And what we've done here is I've tried to give sort of 10 sectors of sport that you can potentially see in this picture. So first of all, you've got federations and local organising committees. People like UEFA, people like the Football Association. They're involved in this picture because if this is a Champions League, I haven't quite worked it out yet, but if it's a Champions League game, UEFA will be involved. They'll have agencies and federations that will be involved in putting this game on. You'll have, I can't really see, up at the top you've got agencies and sponsors. You've got the sponsors of, call it a Champions League game, you've got 7 or 8 sponsors that pay £5-10 million a year to be involved in a Champions League game. So they'll be there. You'll have all the agencies that support those sponsors. They'll be there. You'll have sports marketing agencies. You'll have licensing agencies. You'll have hospitality agencies. They'll all be there. You've got elite and coaching. And as Manchester United said earlier, you know, you've got a whole team, or they've got 65 people in their coaching or elite performance team that will also be there or thereabouts. There's 2 teams, 120 or so people, just for the 2 teams you can see in the picture. You've got the clubs and teams. Manchester United, 600 people in their organisation. They're not all going to be there, but there'll be a large part of them will be there. There's 2 teams. That's 1,200 people. You've got the science and medicine, a bit like the elite and coaching, but there'll be a big team from each club that will be there. You've got the education element of it. You've got the charities element of it that will also be part of this picture. You've got the media and technology. You've got the photographers there. You've got the cameramen there. You've got live feeds, outside broadcasters, all going back. I mean, Champions League, I imagine, probably has something like 150 feeds going out to various countries around the world. They'll all be there in their trucks at the back of the stadium. Admittedly, you probably can't see them, but they will be there. You've got the sporting goods manufacturers that will be there, and all their teams. You've got the venues. Obviously, let's call it Wembley for the sake of argument. I've now seen Bayern Munich, so that gives us a clue. But you call it Wembley, massive stadium. You've got a whole staff of 350 people that run Wembley. Big old stadium. A lot of people will be there, and the suppliers that supply their goods to Wembley or to a sports organisation or venue. There's the beverages. There's the catering staff. There's the cooks. There's all sorts of people that will be supplying goods and services to the venue. You've got the leisure and health. In fairness, there won't be much of that there, other than possibly in the corporate hospitality boxes. But that's really the only other sector that I feel make up the sports industry, although it isn't really in that picture. So I reckon that there's over 200 opportunities just in that picture. And I think it's your responsibility, if you are serious about getting into the sports industry, is to start to whittle those 200 opportunities down and see what fits you. As Jim was saying earlier, you have to understand yourself before you can go out into the market and try and sell yourself. You need to understand what you want to do, what your goals are, what your skills are, what you're good at and what you're not good at, before you start saying, oh, I'd like to go and work for Nike. Well, Nike's not going to want you if you don't know what you want. Very, very clear. Right. It's great that there's 10 million jobs or people in the sports industry. There's 550,000 organisations. And there's 80 people in the room. Wonderful. However, there is competition in the sports industry, as you would expect in anything to do with sport. Very loosely, and these are not, these aren't qualified facts, although some of them are. There's 1,419, and this is fact, different sports-related undergraduate degrees in the UK from 197 universities. So there's probably, theoretically speaking, 80 people in a room in 197 different places in this country doing what we're doing today. There are 476 sports-related postgraduate degrees in the UK. Admittedly, they're not all sports science, they're not all sports management, they're not all physiotherapy, but that's how many there are. And I roughly estimated that there was around 1,500 other sports qualifications that you could acquire outside of the undergraduate degrees and the postgraduate degrees. So they wouldn't necessarily be, well, they wouldn't be degrees, they would be qualifications. If each course had an average of 30 participants, and I think that's quite low, but I wanted to make the point, 30 participants, the estimated qualified population each year is effectively just under 100,000 people. So now, what used to be 80 people in the room has suddenly become 100,000. GlobalSportsJobs, as was mentioned very briefly earlier, is an online digital platform. It posts jobs and it also helps people build their careers. Now, we don't represent the whole industry. We'd like to, and maybe one day we will, but at the moment we probably represent 10, maybe 15% of it, and stronger in some places around the world than in others. But from 2013, we posted just under 3,000 jobs from just under 1,000 organisations. 1 million people viewed those jobs. We have just over 103,000 people view the site each month. Of those jobs posted, 75,000 people applied for those 3,000 jobs. It's competitive. So I think the point I want to make very clear here, and maybe you don't believe me, but maybe, and hopefully one day you will, that you really do need to understand what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what you want to do, what you don't want to do, what you're good at, what you're not good at, and start to hone in now on working out what ultimately will be your career path or your career roadmap. And Jim mentioned it earlier, and I think there is a reason that Manchester United have been so successful over the years, is they know exactly what they're doing and they know exactly how to do it. Just conscious of time, and I want to move on pretty quickly, but the importance of career planning, particularly in sport, cannot be underestimated. It's a very young and fragmented market. We've just seen 200 different jobs in one picture, or over 200 jobs in one picture. You can get very lost, and because it is so young, and as we were saying 15 years ago, that there probably wasn't much of an industry. Because it's so young, it's still finding its feet, which means that it can be quite dangerous in terms of going down blind alleys to understand what you want to do. Therefore, the importance of planning your career or planning a career path, as I said, can't be underestimated. Stay true to your interests. I think it's very, very important. Jim mentioned it earlier. Develop your skills, develop your network, and develop your experience. When I was at Brunel Borough Road, I distinctly remember having a number of books, and they were about the only books you could buy. We had all these sort of physiologist books and biomechanics books, and I think they never got read, or they never seemed to get read. But the books that we all had were things like Nike's Rise to Fame, and Bill Knight, or was it, the president of Nike, his book. There was books by Alan Pascoe. There were who runs Chime, or was fast track. There were books of business people that have been successful in the business of sport. That's what we were reading because that's what we wanted to be. Now, we'll never be that, but at least we started to understand what the market was about and what opportunities or what dreams we could aim for. Challenge yourself and stay ahead of the game. Stay focused. I think it's very important that the more you learn, the more you know, the more experience you have, the more clearer your path will become, and on that basis, your path should never normally stay the same from the beginning. Always revisit your plan and change it if necessary, and make sure it's the right reasons and not the wrong reasons. Again, Jim mentioned this earlier, keep learning and developing. Once you stop learning, you need to move on. Very roughly, or on average, I would say that in an early part of a career, someone shouldn't really be in a job for much longer than 3 years. I think it does depend on what department or what area they are specialising in, but certainly in the commercial market and certainly in some of the more fast-moving opportunities, 3 years is about as maximum you want to stay, because you should be understanding in the first year, learning in the second year, and implementing in the third year. And once you've done that, move on to the next opportunity. Keep your career, keep your experience, and keep your skill development going. Ultimately, a job in the sports industry is about 3 things, and I feel a bit like one of those Channel 4 house programs here, but it's about preparation, preparation, and preparation. The amount of people I see that come to me still go, oh yeah, I like to work in the sports industry. You go, great, what would you like to do? I just want to work in the sports industry. Out. There's no time for people that haven't worked out in their head what they want to do, and they haven't prepared for the meeting, they haven't prepared for the interview, or they haven't, prepared for the opportunity. If you can do most of that, you can whittle that 100,000 people down considerably. I wouldn't like to give you a number, but considerably. Then you need to start to look at what can you do to make yourself stand out, how can you be different? And most of that comes from work experience, voluntary, part-time, we mentioned it earlier, seasonal opportunities. There are internship schemes going on all over the place. They're very, very valuable. They are now at a stage where they are structured. They are at a stage where you are paid for them. There is a legal obligation for organisations to pay. If you are outside of if you've finished your university, if it's not and you're in university and it's a sort of sandwich year, then that's different. That's work experience. There are other qualifications. Don't stay on at university purely because you don't know what you want to do and therefore you think it's a good idea to do a master's. Do a master's because you want to focus in on a particular area to become an expert in that field. I think the main point here, well, there's 2 main points here: preparation, preparation, and preparation. Take that home with you. The second is it's your career. In the sports industry, it's not going to come and sit on your lap and help you find your way. You have to go and find it yourself. There's 100,000 people in the UK that are all having this kind of decision-making process going on in their heads at the moment, and that's each year. At the undergraduate level, I remember thinking, well, they're a year below or they're a year below that, and therefore it's not going to be as competitive. But as soon as you get into a role, whether you're 23, 24, 28, 32, it doesn't matter. Age has got nothing to do with it. You need to look after your career, you need to nurture your career, and you need to develop your career. It's your career, and it deserves respect. Last slide, because I think we could all benefit from the valuable experience that we've got around this table. Make sure your CV is fully representative of yourself. I saw a CV today who wanted to come and work at GlobalSportsJobs. It was diabolical. It didn't even get past, it didn't even come to me. It was absolutely a waste of time. It's very important. Make sure it is representative of you and it stands out. You'll have 3 seconds to reflect yourself in front of the person that's reading that CV. If you don't grab them in that 3 seconds, it will go. Very, very important. The point I also wanted to make on that was that the attitude of people looking to hire is not, more CVs the better. They're looking to whittle their pile of 40, 50, 60, 40 CVs you had for that role. Whoever the line manager is looking at sourcing that candidate will be wanting to get that down to 10. Like Jim was saying earlier, he doesn't go to a game and find the good people. He wants to get rid of the bad people and then focus on the good people. It's exactly the same. Well, line managers want to get rid of 35 of those people and are looking for reasons to do so. Spelling mistakes, bad layouts, whatever it may be, in the bin. Get rid of them. I want the 5 people that best represent our business. Work experience. It can't be underestimated. The more experience you have, the more benefit you will have to an organisation. One word of warning, if you're going to do 10 internships, people will become worried that you are just an internship bunny, for the want of a better word. So you've got to, 2 or 3 internships, great, and that's fine. Try and make them related to what you want to do and where you want to go, but don't do 10 or 11 or 12, because ultimately someone will just go, can't this person can't they stay in for a job? Ultimately, an internship should lead, doesn't always lead, but should lead to some type of opportunity thereafter, and that's what you should be looking for. Contacts, as I said, GlobalSportsJobs represents maybe 5, it's probably a lot less than that, but call it 5% of the market. I would say 60% of the sports industry globally is recruited through its own network. That means the value of contacts is invaluable. Just jump to the third point here, career planning. We've talked about it. I'm not going to talk about it again. We can talk about it on a one-to-one if you want to. Absolutely critical. Change it, move it around, adjust it, but make sure you have it. The other 2, attitude and motivation, and last time I will refer back to the Manchester United slide, but again, Jim was saying, attitude and motivation, they are the most critical skills that you can have when going for an interview. There's an old adage there where you hire for attitude and you train for skill, and I think that's none so more important. It is very important, is what I'm trying to say. It's very important in the sports industry. If you have the right attitude and you are motivated and you're dedicated, people will look at you a lot more favourably than if you just swan in and try and wing it. I've tried to keep it short and sweet. I'm not sure if my 10 minutes was longer or shorter, but I hope that there are things there that you all can take away, apply it to your own situation, apply it to your own objectives and goals, and obviously if I can help in any way now or in the future, I am around.
Thank you very much.